The concept of congestion pricing is quite simple. The city designates a zone and charges the drivers of vehicles a set amount of money for entering said zone. The proceeds of this fee usually go to improving public transportation, with the ultimate goal of reducing car traffic. Every time a congestion charge is proposed, it sparks major controversy, with everyone picking up their pitchforks and starting up their Twitter apps. In this video, I will make the argument that when implemented correctly, congestion pricing works and should be implemented in more cities around the world. Before the video starts, please consider subscribing, it would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, and on to the video. The problem that congestion pricing strives to address can be found in this graph. Traffic congestion increases exponentially, with each car causing exponentially more congestion than the last. For a real-world example, let's look at this road. Let's assume that 3 cars will travel down this road in a minute. If we bump up that number to 5, nothing will really change. The congestion will get just a tiny bit worse. However, if we assumed that the road was extremely congested and that 60 cars will travel down this road in a minute, adding 1 car would make the congestion significantly worse because of multiple factors, like the time it takes to clear an intersection on a single green light cycle, or because of something called the concertina effect. The concertina effect happens when cars are flowing through a road and suddenly a car brakes. The car behind it brakes more, and so on and so forth, until a car comes to a complete stop. This forces the cars behind them to slow down or to stop as well, and so a traffic jam is born. More congested roads are more vulnerable to the concertina effect, because there are shorter distances between individual vehicles, and so the drivers have less time to react and to readjust their speed, should the vehicle in front of them brake. Congestion pricing aims to mitigate this problem by basically inverting it. If a road is super congested, lowering the vehicle count by, for example, 10% will result in more than a 10% reduction in traffic congestion. Combined with this, money will get raised for public transportation, which would then encourage more people to either ditch their cars entirely or reduce their car trips and take transit instead. Reducing car trips would result in multiple benefits, such as cleaner air, less noise and air pollution, and less societal costs that come from subsidizing a famously inefficient mode of travel. However, there are multiple counter-arguments to implementing congestion pricing. Let's dissect them now. The first argument against congestion pricing is that it disproportionately affects the poor and working class. This perspective assumes that cars are the one and only way to move around a city, which is simply not the case, at least in areas where transit, walking or cycling is decently developed, which is almost always the case in cities that have or are planning to implement congestion pricing. The truth is, a boost in public transport funding, and by extension, improving public transport service, will help less fortunate people way more than it'll hurt the few who absolutely have to drive. Also, for poorer people who absolutely have to drive or are willing to put up with the cost, systems can adopt discounted congestion charges. New York City does this. People with incomes of less than $60,000 per year can apply for a 50% discount on the congestion charge. The second argument against congestion pricing is that it will hurt small businesses. I feel really compelled to exist here and to support small businesses here. I just adore the smell of exhaust fumes. Car drivers usually don't stop to pop into a small business. If you're driving down a street and you see a cozy little cafe, you're not very likely to stop to patronize the business. Finding parking, locking the car, and walking over to the business is simply too inconvenient for a lot of people. In comparison, if you're walking or cycling down the same street, it's way more convenient to stop and to pop into the business for a quick coffee or a piece of cake or whatever. In general, the less cars there are in a space, and the easier it is to exist in a space without a car, the more welcoming a place is for pedestrians and cyclists, and so, the more pedestrians and cyclists there are. In general, businesses in more pedestrianized places tend to get more sales than in car-dependent places, all else being equal. Data from multiple cities and countries backs this claim up, further proving that calmer, quieter, more pedestrian and cyclist-friendly streets promote small business growth more than car-infested places. Opponents of pedestrianization and congestion pricing claim that delivery trucks that keep the businesses supplied will pass the congestion charge onto the business and ultimately onto the consumer. However, in my opinion, this argument is flawed. While yes, truck drivers will have to pay a fee to enter, which is higher than a regular car, but they will also benefit from the reduced traffic congestion. Reduced traffic congestion will allow trucks to complete more deliveries, which will ultimately lead to cost savings. For proof, we can look to cities which have already implemented congestion pricing. According to a poll of London small business owners, which implemented a congestion charge all the way back in 2003, 91% of respondents reported either no effect on their business or actually reported cost savings because of the congestion charge. Now, let's look at the benefits of congestion pricing. As previously stated, on congested roads where demand exceeds capacity, reducing the amount of vehicles by a set amount, for example 10%, leads to more than a 10% reduction in traffic congestion, because traffic congestion grows exponentially. Additionally, in most cases, the money raised by congestion pricing goes into improving public transport service. Congestion charging also benefits drivers. Because of lower traffic congestion, people who want to or need to drive will have a faster, smoother, less congested journey. In addition, less cars in the urban core makes it a more pleasant, attractive place. No one likes existing next to a congested road, listening to all the noise, and breathing in all the lovely exhaust fumes and tire particles. It's no secret that the most polluted places in cities are industrial areas and those close to large car thoroughfares. For an example of this, we can look to Paris, which has made massive strides in reclaiming its street space from cars. In 2007, its air was quite unpleasant to breathe. Since then, we are seeing massive improvements, partly driven by the city's efforts to reduce the amount of car traffic. Congestion pricing is one of the ways of trying to reduce the amount of unnecessary car traffic. Congestion pricing is effective at reducing traffic congestion, speeding up trip times, and making cities more livable. You don't have to take my word for it. Many cities around the world have implemented congestion pricing, and so we can take a look at the results. For examples of congestion pricing bringing tangible benefits to a city, we can look towards two cities which have had congestion pricing for over 10 years, London, UK, and Stockholm, Sweden. After implementation, traffic congestion in the designated zones dropped by 20% in Stockholm and by a whopping 30% in London. Opponents of the congestion charge scheme point to traffic congestion returning back to the pre-congestion charge levels in London. But as with everything, we need to unpack this. First, there are way more cars on the UK's roads than there were in 2003, when the congestion charge was introduced. There are almost 4 million more registered vehicles in the UK now than there were in 2003, and all those vehicles have to go somewhere. And second, way more space is allocated to buses, cyclists and pedestrians now than in 2003, resulting in upticks in transit ridership and especially cycling, which has seen a 400% increase in trips from 2003. Third, billions of pounds were raised for public transportation by the congestion charge, helping projects like the Elizabeth Line get built. Looking at this graph of estimated daily trips in London per year, we can see that the number of car trips has slightly declined since 2003, but cycling, walking, and transit usage have considerably increased, proving that the measures taken to provide viable alternatives to driving are, by and large, working. In my opinion, if the congestion charge wasn't implemented, and if the city leadership didn't make efforts to make alternatives to driving more viable, London would be even more congested than it is now, because those trips taken by alternative modes of travel wouldn't just disappear. Loads of people would opt for driving instead, and as we all know by this point, traffic congestion increases exponentially. Considering these, I'd argue that the congestion charging scheme is mostly successful. The residents of Stockholm and London seem to agree too. Over 50% of Londoners show support for expanding the congestion pricing scheme beyond central London. In Stockholm, 2/3 of residents show a favorable opinion of the congestion pricing scheme. Public opinion on congestion pricing in both of these cities has changed massively. In both cities, only a minority of residents said that they would support a congestion charge scheme before it was implemented. But now, After implementing the charge and seeing the results, public opinion has considerably changed, and most residents are now in support of congestion pricing. The Stockholm Center for Transport Studies calls this phenomenon the Stockholm Congestion Pricing Syndrome. To sum up, just charging drivers for entry by itself isn't the solution to traffic congestion, but combining congestion pricing with investments in public transport, walking and cycling, encouraging drivers to use roads at off-peak times, etc., can have a real impact on traffic congestion. Ultimately, promoting car traffic like we mostly do now is wholly unsustainable, and we should be looking towards cleaner, more sustainable, and more efficient transportation solutions. I believe that congestion charging, when implemented properly, has the potential to be a viable method of reducing traffic congestion and to make cities more livable. Anyway, thank you so much for watching to the end. You're a real legend. I actually got a new microphone arm for recording. Hopefully the audio quality improved. Let me know in the comments, please. If you'd like to support my work, I have a Ko-Fi page with 3 membership tiers, all of which bring you sweet benefits, like early access to my videos. There are also affiliate links to the equipment I use to make these videos in the description. Any help would be greatly appreciated. I'd also like to take this time to thank Monday's Last Brain Cell and Arrow Martian for supporting the channel with the top membership tier. I can't express how grateful I am for the support. Enjoy the bloopers. This has been Tramley and I'll see you next time. Bye! Every time a congestion charge is proposed, it sparks major Bruh. London would be even more congested than it is. In both cities, only a minority of residents said that they would. Ultimately, promoting car traffic like bruh. What? Just why, bro?